First, let me just say I'm so glad you're here with this masterclass, whether you're live or whether you're watching the replay of this. The journey to self-acceptance, and this is key and essential whether you're trying to lose weight or if you're trying to get on top of a goal in life. If you have felt like there's a block in your life, a lot of times it comes from this almost self-sabotage way we look and we view ourselves. And there's a lot of freedom that's going to be found in this masterclass today. I encourage you, whether you're live or replay, please comment. Please let me know what ahas you're having throughout the masterclass. Please let me know what questions you have additionally so I can come back and I can answer those questions and solidify them. Engage today. Get out some paper. You're going to want to take some notes. You're going to want to do some activities. You might want to come back and hit pause and replay. This is free. So let's dive in today to kind of what we're going to be looking at. And really, let's start off by just defining some things. So too many people are trying to be something that they're not. And this grinds them down. Too many of us try to pretend to be something that we are not. Maybe we're trying to impress people. Maybe we're trying to fool ourselves into thinking that we are completely different people. The sad part, too many of us are not aware that this is happening. It's just something that happens on autopilot. We keep pushing forward, but ultimately it still does not measure up. Regardless of how hard we try and regardless of how much effort we put in, we simply are not happy, nor are we fulfilled. There's always something missing. They feel incomplete, flawed, and weak. Of course, this happens deep down inside, and oftentimes we can't even put a finger on it. We feel that something is missing, something is off, and we fail to see the 800-pound elephant in the room. Too many people suffer from imposter syndrome, regardless of the fact that they actually know that what they're doing and that they're quite competent in certain areas of their life, and they still feel like they're a giant fraud. They feel like they are in danger of somehow being found out. They feel this because they're under the impression that they must be perfect all the time. I used to feel this way. It's when you're underneath this, you feel like you must impress people all the time. So what's the root cause of this? The idea of perfection. People might not be able to articulate this belief, but they definitely think and act like it. You don't necessarily need to have the concept of the proper name of what you're going through. Some sort of process or suffering certain symptoms is all that matters. Regardless, people are trapped living in this idea of being perfect or living up to someone else's expectations or not being truly themselves. So pro tip, you don't have to be perfect because guess what? No one is. The truth is you can't be your best at all times. That's just not going to happen. You can't be all things to all people, nor can you have it all. Unfortunately, too many people think that they have to be perfect because they expect themselves to be perfect. We assume that people expect us to be perfect, so we expect ourselves to be perfect, and this creates a downward spiral. And too many of us think that this striving perfection or the appearance of perfection is a genuine source of pride. Other people hang on to the emotion albatross of perfectionism because they think others are relying on them to be perfect. These kind of people will think that other people cannot move or live full lives unless they are perfect. So this masterclass teaches you how to get out of that long shadow of wanting to be perfect. Instead, you will learn how to achieve peace within by accepting yourself fully, flaws and all. This is how I had to learn how to accept myself. These are the exact things that I put into place and that I work with clients on. So you aren't perfect and you have flaws. That's an amazing thing because that makes you a beautiful human being. Our differences are the things that we do well, the things that we don't do well. It's you. It's unique to you. You're one of a kind. Embrace it, right? And secondly, before we get into part one here, I think this is so true. Self-acceptance is not acceptance of how you feel about your outer self. Acceptance is acceptance of your whole self. Let me say that again. Self-acceptance is not an acceptance of how you feel about your outer self. It's an acceptance of your whole self. So we have 10 parts here today. And so let me go through what each one of those 10 parts are, brief, quick view of them. And then I'm going to introduce myself and we will dive in. All right, so here are the 10 parts to the series. Talk about 8 mindsets that crush personal contentments. Choosing to accept yourself is not a cop-out. Number 2. 3. If you don't accept yourself, who will? 4. Self-acceptance is crucial to self-respect and self-love. 5. The foundation of acceptance, letting go of harmful perfection. 6. Honestly know your flaws. 7. Quit apologizing for your flaws. 8. Turn your flaws into assets. 9. Know your limits. And 10. Learn to move on. It's going to be absolutely amazing. This is a packed masterclass today. I'm super excited because I know it's going to transform your life. If you have not yet, please like, subscribe, share this with somebody else, get them to join, and don't forget to comment all throughout. I want to know what your thoughts are throughout. Let me have that feedback. I will respond to each one. In case we haven't met before, real quick, I want to make sure I introduce myself. You know who I am. My name is Jen Plike, and I'm simply your holistic empowerment coach. Really for emotional and binge eaters that feel stuck in their life and feel like they can't get past the different struggles that are beyond just working out and beyond just nutrition. And I take them from that place of stuck. I'm going to do that 180 to authentic thriving through my 20 plus years in the health and wellness industry with personal training, group fitness instructing, nutrition coaching, life and transformational empowerment coaching, and I had 16 years as an educator too, into one complete program from when I was at my own wit's end, going from diet fad, and not finding success for myself or my clients, just hating what I saw in the mirror, having so much self-hate, moving from abusive relationship to abusive relationship, and really it's when I did my own 180. I was really able to find something that wasn't out there, was an empty promise program, something that was sustainable, realistic, practical. Through our micro habits, do we actually create a fit life in a mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit? And so I'm redefining fit as a lifestyle, like a holistic approach to that. Then make sure that you do follow my channel, because I bring you a lot of information. Before we dive into part one, here's a great quote to end an introduction on. Once your mindset changes, everything on the outside will change along with it. Let's dive in. Let's start with part one. This important stuff. 8 mindsets that crush personal contentment. And the French philosopher Jean-Jacques said, "Man was born free, but everywhere he is in chains." Of course, what he meant was in political terms, but this is also true in spiritual and emotional terms. Most of the time, we hold the key to our mental prisons that we live in. We define the world in neat, tidy little boxes that spell what we can and cannot do, who we can and cannot be, and where we can and cannot go. Almost all this is arbitrary, but they are all too real because we make them real by believing them. We are born free, but we refuse to turn the lock of that mental prison that we choose to be in. And much of the situation can be tied down to 8 mindsets that work to hold us back and drag us down. Oftentimes, we are ultimately unaware of these mindsets, though. So still, the sooner that we get out from the influence of these, the sooner we will live life of adventure, meaning, fulfillment, and paradoxically enough, control. See if you can identify the following mindsets. Letting go of them prepares you to have life to the fullest potential. And these are things that I had to actually define in my life and see in my life as issues. So this comes from a place of personal learning and personal development in ways I had to break free from my own control of my mind, because it was self-sabotage, really. So first, you always have to be in control. First mindset. The first mindset that crushes personal contentment is that the very idea that you must be in control in all areas of your life. Now, it doesn't take much human experience to figure out how wrong this is. You've heard of Murphy's Law, right? The worst things happen at the worst times. You probably also know that life is what happens when you have other plans. Life has its own agenda. It spins on its own axis, regardless of our best plans. And unfortunately, the more we choose to believe that we have to be always in control, the less likely we will be happy. You see, when it comes to life, you have to give it a lot of wiggle room. You can set goals, you can plan ahead, but ultimately at the end of the day, you have to accept what you get out of the process. 9 times out of 10, if you take care of things the right way and put in the best effort, things will pan out roughly the way you want. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to fit the exact picture you have when you were planning the goal, but it can come close enough. Unfortunately, if we believe we always have to be in control, we rob ourselves of the joy of achievement. We can never quite seem to get there because we feel we did not control the variables. We refuse to be happy. Secondly, everyone cares about what's going on in your life. Ooh, this is a big one. Another debilitating mindset that holds people back is the idea that the world is a stage and they are the center of the spotlight. I don't know how to tell you this, but there are 8 billion people on this planet. The numbers continue to grow. Everybody's got enough problems of their own. While it may seem that everybody makes a big deal of your shortcomings and personal drama, at the end of the day, they really don't care. They have too much on their plate already. Still, we would like to believe that everyone cares about what's going on in life as if we were in a microscope. What we're really doing is that we are mentally putting ourselves in the center of the universe, which is the farthest place from where we really are. It gives us the sense of control. It definitely gives us the sense of importance. But the problem is, the more you believe this, everyone cares about what's going on in your life, the more likely that you will try to live your life to please others. This is a serious problem because you have to live your life based on what matters to you. Of course, this has limits. You can't live your life to harm other people. You can't live your life in a way that hurts other people. But at the end of the day, you have to live your life. You have to take care of yourself. Self-care is the foundation of responsibility. Unfortunately, the more we hang on to this distorted belief that people really care about what's going on in our own lives and look to us for some center of gravity, the more we would live our lives to please others or to live up to those impossible standards, and the more disappointed we become, right? Thirdly, everyone looks up to you for support or as a standard. This mindset is just a variation of what I just discussed, right? You have to understand that people have enough problems of their own. While people can voice their support and express their admiration of you, at the end of the day, their standard has to be themselves, because that's what they're going to come back to. At the end of a person's life, I guarantee you that they are not going to be thinking about how they lived up to somebody else. Instead, they're going to be examining what kind of life they actually lived. It all comes back to this point. We all have a home, whether we accept it or not. Unfortunately, when we believe that everyone else looks to us either for assistance or to come up with some sort of standard, then we end up playing all sorts of games with ourselves. We often create standards that are meant to impress others, but really are rooted in who we are. Again, living your life for others is commendable, right? To a certain degree. It's praiseworthy. By the end of the day, you still have to take care of yourself, though. You still have to base your life on your truth. And one of the worst lies you can play on yourself is to think that you are some sort of standard, not because the standard truly comes from your experiences and your values, but because you want to impress other people. You lose sight of the truth by trying to become the truth of others. It's paradoxical and ultimately destructive. So remember, you have to come back home to your truth. Next, your parents and loved ones will not be happy if you are not perfect. Human beings have a tendency of blowing things out of proportion. Hand raised. This, of course, comes to the fact that we tend to read too much into the signals that people give us. We try to mind read, right? Every single day, people are saying stuff to us. They definitely are sending us all sort of verbal and nonverbal signals. We interpret these. That's what we constantly do. But we get in trouble when we read meaning into them that is not logical. We stretch the rational meaning that can possibly be read into something. It is not uncommon for people to look at the reality based solely on what they think is real. In other words, they're not looking at the objective truth. Instead, they're projecting their own insecurities, inadequacy, and misconceptions. Unfortunately, one of the most common ways we do this is that we think that the people who love us the most in the world expect us to be perfect. It may be based on some sort of objective statement, but we blow it out of proportion. We stretch it to the point that it breaks, and it breaks away totally from reality. We have to understand that our parents expect the best from you because they want you to live your best life, right? But they also are adult enough to understand that ultimately you have to find your own way. All of us have to do that. Unfortunately, this is very easy to distort into a sick sense of obligation. We read into the demand for perfection. It's very easy to see why this takes place in the first place, because when you were a kid, our parents have standards. An A is an A, F is a failing grade, objective standards. And it's an important part of the development of a human being to know how these standards work. But somewhere along the way, we confused the existence of standards with the exaggerated sense of obligation that you have to be perfect. Let me tell you, it would be unreasonable and downright cruel of your parents to expect you to be perfect when they themselves are not. The truth is that there's no such thing as a perfect human being. We are in no position to expect perfection from others when ourselves are not perfect. But unfortunately, all of this is lost if you suffer from this mindset. Instead, you read into the signals that you're receiving from your parents and the ones that you truly admire and respect for the most of your life and call it perfection. If it first starts out as having a standard but gets twisted and exaggerated into something that oppresses you. Believe it or not, standards are supposed to push you forward and onward. They are what make you successful. They are what make us a better person, but they have limits, and we cannot read into them all sorts of insecurities that then become shackles ultimately. And that's precisely what happens to people who think everyone else looks to them for support or some curse or standard, and the loved ones will not be happy unless they're perfect. So what about this one? You always have to be better than others. Oh, this is a tough one. Another deliberating mindset is that people suffer from the idea they always have to be better. This is going to be impossible because all of us are a mix of peaks and valleys. Seriously, even Bill Gates, and Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, is flawed, limited, lacking in some area of their life. If you don't believe me, just imagine Jeff Bezos comparing himself to Michael Jordan in terms of basketball skills. I know it's a ridiculous example, but precisely the point. You can be you can't be all things to all people. You cannot be the perfect person because there is no such thing. There's no such animal. We all have angels and devils in our character. Bill Gates may be a great businessman. Maybe he may be a great inventor, an amazing philanthropist, but he might be a lousy basketball player. The problem when you think that you always have to be better than everyone else, right? Across the board, you have to be a better, philanthropist. You have to be more compassionate. You have to look better. You have to be better, conversationalist. You have to be amazing basketball in the basketball court. Across the board, do you see how impossible that is? Good. Let go of that mindset, and you have to be better than others to allow yourself to feel fulfilled, complete, content, happy. It's not going to happen. Where with this one? People care if you fail. This is a big one, and this one really flows from the mindset that everyone cares about what's going on in your life. So when things fall apart and don't work out as you anticipated or planned, or you take this very personally, you feel less of a person. You feel like you have massively dropped the ball. Let me let you in on a secret I had to discover. Everyone fails. People get divorced. People get thrown in jail. People are doing things they shouldn't do. People make wrong decisions that mess up their life. Regardless how you define it, everyone fails. Now, it is one thing to assume that people will have some level of concern for you when you're down on your luck. That's okay. That's healthy. That's the way it should be. That's why we're supposed to have support networks. That's why we have loved ones like family and friends. But to take this to a ridiculous level, assume that people care and obsess about your failure is nothing more than just a form of, really it's something that's going to drive you crazy because you're going to be beating yourself up. You have to understand that spectacular as your bankruptcy, divorce, jail sentence, disease, depression, or sense of personal disaster may be, at the end of the day, everyone's got their own problems to take care of. I keep coming back to that. Everyone has their own personal failures to attend to. Some people might sit up and pay attention and say, wow, that is harsh. Or thank goodness that didn't happen to me. But at the end of the day, they move on, and so should you. Unfortunately, the more you think that people are obsessed about your failure, the worse your failures become. How come? Well, the less likely you are to try again. You get knocked down, you stay down because you're so afraid of how people will laugh at you, point at you because you failed. You create all these reasons and excuses not to try again. Let me tell you, the only way to fail is to quit, and that's precisely what you're doing in this mindset. Next, happiness is a destination. One of the most toxic mindsets that can get in the way of any kind of personal contentment is the idea that happiness is some sort of destination. You find yourself working up to set goals, and once you achieve them, you're still not happy because you feel like you'll only be happy if certain things fall into place. Well, life, being the way it is, will prevent you from this happening. As awesome as things may be in your life, there will always be room for improvement. That's what makes life awesome. It's also what makes it frustrating because everything does not fall into place. There's no neatness to this. You just have to accept what you can at a certain level. In other words, you have to move on. But when you think that you will only be happy when certain things are in your life, the more you work towards those goals, the more you realize that you can never be happy. But once you work towards your goals, your definition of happiness and the destination that you set for yourself changes because the process changes you. Believe it or not, setting up a goal transforms your life because the work that you put into it, the process you go through, and most importantly, the setbacks that you experience change you. While this is going on, don't be surprised if your definition of happiness or goals will change. Next mindset. Whether people think about you is more important than what you think about yourself. Man, all these tough, you guys. So true, though. Finally, one mental shackle to pare off the handcuffs that we need to get rid of is the idea that what people think of us is more important than what we think of ourselves. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, people have their own responsibilities for themselves. We have to be responsible for our own happiness, fulfillment, and contentment. Happiness is a state of mind, ultimately, right? And the more you think that the judgment of others trumps your own assessment of yourself, the less likely you are to feel content because you basically are living your life for the approval and validation of others. At the end of the day, you're the one who's going to have to live your life, not them. You owe it to yourself to at least accept and be content with what you have set for yourself. This means accepting your decisions. And unfortunately, when we play this game with ourselves and with other people, impressions, validations, and appreciation is more important than what we ourselves think about our lives. We put ourselves in a downward spiral. It is really, psychological and emotional pit, and it gets worse. The more we crave validation from others, the worse we feel about our decisions and our lives. You see, ultimately, happiness depends on your mindset and your attitude. Roy T. Bennett said that. And the truth is that all the things I just went over are things that in my life I had to get right because I felt all those ways. I had all those bad mindsets, and I had to change those because until I could change those, I was locked in my own prison. I was self-sabotaging. There's a reason why, I hated what I saw when I looked in the mirror. And I love this other quote. Self-acceptance is not about becoming a different person, but about becoming the person that you are meant to be. And so many times we suppress it, so many times we push it down till we deal with that mind and the why we act the way we do, right? Even in basic CBT, it's about going back and seeing what your beliefs are. What are those core beliefs that you have? And so in the next part, we're going to look at choosing to accept yourself as not a cop-out. So many people think this is a cop-out. All right, part 2, I love this part. Choosing to accept yourself is not a cop-out. And so this masterclass teaches you the art of self-acceptance. Self-acceptance, after all, is crucial to personal contentment. If you want to be happy with the life you've created for yourself, you have to accept yourself. There are no other ways about it. Personal contentment is definitely not going to happen, and unless you accept yourself, warts and all. Unfortunately, this does not come easy to most people. After all, we put all sorts of barriers against self-acceptance. We don't intentionally put these up. It's not like you wake up one day and decide to sabotage yourself, right? To personal happiness and your ability to express joy. Instead, they creep up on you. You pick them up along the way. Oftentimes, you don't know where they come from or what triggers them. Still, there is no getting around the fact that they hold you down and keep you back from fully accepting yourself. 3 of the most common reasons we give ourselves for not engaging in self-acceptance involve the following. Accepting yourself as a cop-out. One common mindset is to assume that self-acceptance is that some sort of cop-out. You're not supposed to accept yourself. You're supposed to strive to be better. Life is about striving. It's all about struggle to rise up and become better, moment by moment, day after day. The moment you accept yourself, you're basically copping out. You're giving yourself a reason not to try to improve. It's some sort of feel-good mantra that really doesn't mean much of anything. 2, you're lowering your standards. Another barrier we put up between self-acceptance is the idea that is an act of lowering the goalpost. Somehow, some way, we can't make it the normal way. You just don't have it in you. So you lower your standards when you accept yourself for who you are. You don't want to become something bigger. You don't want to become something better. So you lower these standards. It's a very toxic barrier against self-acceptance. Who wants to feel that we're not living up to the highest of standards? Who wants to feel that one is constantly aiming too low? So we forget about the idea of self-acceptance. Instead, we hang on to our standards, but they actually end up working against us. And number 3, you are being weak or caving in. Another common reason people find themselves give to themselves as to why they can't accept themselves is that they are this idea of weakness. It's easy to think that there's some romantic or noble thing about being strong or trying to be strong. It's nice to see yourself fighting against an army of problems in life, just pushing back against all odds. That eventually, after all, the struggle, right? Strife and sacrifice, you will come out on top. It's a nice romantic picture, but life usually doesn't end up that way. I don't know about you guys, at least not for me. But ultimately, you run out of steam. Ultimately, you lose the battle because you're trying to be something that you're not. In fact, it's a sign of strength when you realize that you are worthy of acceptance, sign of maturity, not some sort of personal defeat or weakness or inadequacy. So self-acceptance means understanding our limits. The truth is the world is limited. I know that's not what you're supposed to say. That's definitely not what you're supposed to believe. We're supposed to think that the world is limitless, that there's tremendous sense of possibility out there, that we should live our lives with this amazing sense of adventure. Well, that's the idea, but reality is another matter entirely. Not everyone is given the same hand to play. Not everyone has made the right decisions. While it's still true that we all start with the same amount of potential as we live our lives, decisions narrow that potential. This doesn't mean that you're completely out of opportunities. Hear me now. But this also does not mean that your life always goes to the same amount of potential as before, right? We have to understand the limits and work within them. We can push against them, or we can choose to transform them, okay? But there are limits to what you can do. Self-acceptance is all about understanding that limits exist, that they can be changed to a certain degree. It's a precise opposite of continuing to believe that you basically have a blank check in life. That lottery mindset, you're basically thinking that despite the habits that you have picked up along the way, as well as the consequences of the decisions you've made, right, or I made, our chances of producing results are the same as everybody else. That may happen from time to time, like winning the lottery, but it's usually a bad idea to plan your life around winning the lottery. You have to focus on what is probable. That means understanding where limits come in. And then self-acceptance means choosing your base of your strength and competency. So I know by this point After a decision regarding understanding limits, it's easy to get depressed, it's easy to get discouraged. Well, the truth can be discouraging and depressing at times, but it can also set you free. That's where this brutal honesty comes in that I always talk about. When we understand that limits do exist and that there is a context to these limits, we can focus on what we have. We have to understand that having limits is not the same as having nothing to work with. Let's get that clear. Having limits is not the same thing as having nothing to work with. There are people on this planet that have the same physical limitations, no limbs, serious health problems, but despite those limits, they are able to achieve a lot. They're not able to achieve everything that everybody else is able to achieve, but they're able to achieve a lot. How come? Well, they look at the limits and they accept them. In this process, they actually accept. The acceptance gives them a lot of strength, and they can build certain bedrock of competency. And from there, they continue to build. What would otherwise look like a very bleak, limited set of prospects actually turns out to be a source of life, light, and happiness. But it all goes back to accepting and understanding your limits and choosing to base your strength and competency on the reality of those limits. So here's the truth. Limits can be transcended. The problem with our decision is that a lot of people start with the end first. That's what they do. They focus on the fact that limits can be transcended. This was true in the past, this is true now, and this will continue to be true in the future. But you cannot base your self-acceptance on this fact first. This comes last. You have to first focus on overcoming your reasons against self-acceptance. Once you're able to do that, then you have to understand your limits. Then choose to base the strength and competency on the reality of those limits. Then and only then can you start thinking about transcending those limits. It's really hard to transcend your own limitations when you haven't built a base of strength and competency. So hopefully you see how that works. Stop putting the cart before the horse, per se. How does this work? Well, you have to accept your limits now. Next, you have to understand that the growth means transcendence. In other words, you understand your limits, work with them, master what you can control, then build up. The next step is to push back against the walls of your comfort zone so you can become more competent. The key here is increased competence. This is not something that happens to you because you willed it. You just don't wake up one day and all of a sudden this amazing competence level falls in your lap. We wish, but it doesn't work that way. Instead, when we first start out, with the limitations and become at peace with those limitations, we start to focus on the things that we can control. We start mastering them. They turn into a source of strength. You become more and more competent. And once you're able to do this, then you can push against the walls of your own comfort zone. So the goal is to become mature ultimately. Maturity is defined by how far you have progressed from your base strength and competency. In other words, you first understand your limits. You start there. But your level of maturity is measured by how far you go from that initial understanding of where you are and where you end up. Everybody has come to the grips with the fact that they are limited. We can't have it all, nor can we start with everything. But the moment we understand our limits, we can start to build a base. Because as we push back against our comfort zone, we figure things out and we connect the dots and detect patterns. That's when things become possible. We become stronger, more competent, we're able to solve more problems, and people come to us to solve their problems. It becomes our strength. So waiting to be like somebody else is a waste of the wonderful person we really are. Let's face it, there's one of us. No one else can live up and do the mission that we were set here on earth to do. We have a purpose for being here in such a time and place as this. And if we don't fulfill that destiny, if we don't fulfill that calling in life, nobody else will. And there's going to be things that never happen, people who are never touched because we were too focused on becoming somebody else instead of living ourselves. Not being comfortable with yourself is the real definition of loneliness. I think, I've heard it said you can be in a room of crowded people, having been around crowded people, and still feel so alone. I've been there before. And it was during the times when I was not self-accepting, when I was so concerned about what other people thought of me, when I was so concerned with not being good enough, when perfectionists ruled my life, when I was at self-sabotaging in so many different ways. And before we move on to part 3, where if you don't accept yourself, who will? Let me end with this. Believe you are beautiful. Know you are beautiful. The world will follow suit. The thing is that we project out in the world how we view ourselves, whether we realize it or not. And you have to find your worth. You have to find who you are. And the thing is that, anyone, whoever is listening to you, whoever watching this, you are worth it. You are worth this journey. So in the comments right now, put, I am worth it, and let's do it. All right, moving into part 3 here. If you don't accept yourself, who will. That's the truth. I'm a big fan of romantic comedies, and one of the most common themes in these type of movies, though, that I disagree with is that you complete me. That's nice to hear, but it's also very damaging if you believe that. The truth is, you cannot wait for others to complete you. That is your job. People talk like a game. They say they can't live without you. You complete them. You make great music together. But at the end of the day, they have enough problems of their own. Depending upon others to complete you, leaves you incomplete and dependent. You're like a lock and you're waiting for a key. Well, it would be great if the key would appear tomorrow. What if it doesn't? Are you going to spend the rest of your life waiting for that key? You shouldn't. You have to take matters into your own hands. And the worst thing about waiting for others to complete you is the fact that you begin to resent them. You start blaming them for what's wrong, what's missing in your life, because after all, they complete you. You heap all sorts of obligations on them because they complete you. This is a cruel joke that you play on yourself. The truth is, others cannot give meaning or your true validation. That's your job. Why do they fail? Why are they not up to the job? Very simple. They can't because they cannot fully know you. You know who can fully understand you? Yourself. Start there. Waiting for others' acceptance is irresponsible. If you wait around for the right person to complete you, unlock your full open engine, inspire you to greatness, the whole 9 yards, you are being irresponsible. You really are. And this is someone who used to be this way, okay? So why? You're making excuses for your failures. That's what you're doing. You're giving yourself all sorts of nicely sounding excuses for not rolling up your own sleeves and taking care of what you need to handle right there, right now. You make excuses for the fact that you're not trying hard enough and you're not experimenting enough and you're not taking enough risks. Whatever the case may be, waiting for others to accept us gives us an out. Even if others accept you, you only find people to blame. The only thing that you're gaining, really, when you wait for others to accept you, is for people to blame. Since they can't accept you and you failed, you can blame them for letting you down. They did not fully understand you. They did not live up to their end of the bargain. They did not inspire you enough. They did not push you enough. They did not challenge you enough. The list is endless. Worst of all, you can blame them for not fully understanding you. And I'm sorry, but people are not mind readers. I used to always say in relationships, I'm not a mind reader. Like, just tell me what you want. So how can you expect people to fully accept you when you don't even know yourself fully? Because if you fully knew yourself, you would know how that is a dead end. You cannot wait for others to complete you. You have to accept you for who you are. You have to do that. So the answer is pretty simple. The answer is simple. Step up. That's all you need to do. That's right. You are responsible for your life. Only you can know yourself fully. I encourage you to really use this information to accept yourself. Words and all, to say there will always be rough spots. There will always be problem areas, but you will have to accept yourself and position yourself for better things. Nobody can do this except for you. This is the essence of responsibility. You have to be complete with the right one comes along. One of the biggest issues we make, we go into marriage, we go into relationships, we think that the person is going to complete us, and we're two broken people trying to come together. We need two whole, complete people who are fine with being themselves, who know who they are to come together, and that's how we're going to thrive. It doesn't work any other way. They won't show up and complete you. That's how you know that they're right for you, right? If they are themselves complete in of themselves, and you are complete in of yourself. Life does not work the other way. And it wasn't until I stopped dating for 2 years, after running from boyfriend to boyfriend, and was okay with myself, and okay if I was going to live my life alone, that I realized the power of this, you guys. That we have to get this right. If you are stuck here, please make a point to free yourself and be okay with you. And a lot of times it just takes you forcing yourself to be alone and by yourself and deal with yourself and realize that you are good enough, that you are perfect enough the way you are, in the sense that we are perfectly imperfect, right? And that's okay. To end part 3 here, there's 2 quotes I love. The quote by the Buddha, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path, and it's the journey back to ourselves, to redefining who we are and being thriving as we, that really makes a difference in our lives. And this next one I had up just a minute ago, if you saw it. But unconditional self-love is about honoring who you are today, not who you might become tomorrow. When you create some mystical, better version of yourself. And so we have to love ourselves as we are, flaws and alls. And the truth is that our flaws really makes us unique. It makes us who we are. And so we're going to dive into the next part, which is self-acceptance is crucial to self-respect and self-love, and why this is so important, why the power lies within that self-acceptance, and how do we do that. Let's begin to unpack this. So if you feel like, man, Jen, I'm a little overwhelmed right now, man, I see myself in this, then don't worry, because I've been there. And so I'm going to give you that path to where you can really find yourself and really love and accept yourself and be complete as you. Because I did learn to be complete as me. I was someone who always was looking to other people to complete me or to show up for me, and that's just not possible. So get excited. We're going to dive in a little bit more. Keep being brutally honest with yourself. We dive into part 4 here, and this is something that can be even a touchy type thing. This might reach your heart, because self-acceptance is crucial to self-respect and self-love, and you cannot respect yourself if you don't accept yourself. Respect is earned. How can you earn respect from yourself when you don't even accept yourself? So many times we're playing all sorts of games. We're trying to be somebody else. We're holding ourselves up to ridiculous standards. We're filling our head with all sorts of ideas that don't make any sense as far as life goes. Self-respect is crucial, because if you don't have this, it's too easy for others to treat you like a doormat. And this is coming from someone who's been through abusive relationships, who has been through a lot of things in life where I've just been so used. So I get it. It's too easy for people to take you for granted, abuse you, play games with you, and lie with you. Respect is all about drawing boundaries and expecting and living up to your obligations. But little of that is possible if you cannot get yourself to respect yourself. You cannot love yourself if you don't accept yourself. If you think gaining self-respect is bad enough, it gets even worse. Self-love is crucial for any kind of success in life. Without self-love, it's just not going to work out. Forget it. It's not going to happen. Unfortunately, you cannot love yourself if you don't accept yourself. How can you? Love means trust. It means acceptance. You don't trust yourself because you're not who you want to be. You don't accept yourself because you don't have what you think you should have. And without self-love, you cannot master yourself. You cannot spend enough time, attention to detail on yourself to make yourself a better person. It's not going to happen. You're always going to be running around because you hate yourself. You're not happy with it. You're trying to be somebody else. You're trying to live up to other people's lives. You're trying to live up to their expectations. You're doing these things, running around in circles, chasing your tail because you do not love yourself. And all of it comes back to self-respect. And self-respect leads to personal boundaries and autonomy. When you respect yourself, you have boundaries. You know who you are and you know who you're not. You know what you're capable of and you know what is beyond you. This is the beginning of power. Because when you know who you are and what you're working with, you put yourself in a better position to control your assets. This enables you to invest in your time better, which makes it harder for others to take advantage of you. It also makes it harder for others to abuse you. Self-love ultimately leads to mastery. When you truly love yourself, you're not loving yourself to that extent that you become a horrible person. Instead, you self-love leads to self-improvement because you discover your passions. You find out your true pride, your true source of pride, and from these you find out your areas of competence. You love yourself enough to know that you are good at certain things and that you invest enough time, effort, and attention to build them up and to build up their value. This enables you to develop a healthier identity, because when you master certain things, you are competent with certain other things. For once, you're not running around trying to be all things to all people. You're not trying to master everything. You just focus on what you know to be true. This is where you develop real pride, and at its root is competence. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can ridicule you at these points. But here's the problem. This mastery has to be built on the cornerstone of self-love. And before we can even love ourselves, we need to talk about next part 5, the foundation acceptance of letting go of harmful perfectionism, because we know perfection is going to kill us, right? It's going to make it so that we never become ourselves. We don't respect ourselves because we're not living to that perfect standard. And this is someone who comes from that place of having lived, try to be a perfect person to everybody and everything, and I was driving myself crazy and made myself so sick. So if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. All right, moving on to this part 5, and this is powerful. The foundation of acceptance, learning to let go of harmful perfection. Perfection is a standard that's all it is. It's not a destination. Don't ever think that you will somehow, some way become perfect. Don't let the idea enter your head that if you put in enough work and time, eventually you'll be perfect. You're just going to be chasing your tail. Trust me, like I've been there. You're going to run yourself ragged. You're going to burn out sooner than later. Despite all these, at the end of the journey, what will you have to show for it? That's right, a whole lot of nothing. The truth is, you aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. You never will be, and I will never be, regardless of how hard we try, how smart or good looking we are, how many advantages we start out with. It's just not going to happen. Nobody is perfect. It's not a destination. You can never reach it. Instead, it's a standard. It's supposed to be an impossible standard to push us, to go for something better. Perfection is not a commodity either. It's not something that you can buy. It's definitely not something someone can even give you. It's one thing to be motivated. It's another one to become delusional and allow the idea of perfection to consume us. As the old saying goes, to hit the moon, you have to aim for the sun. Again, perfection is just a standard, not a destination nor a commodity. So all you have is who you are now, your standards. The one thing you have is yourself right now. Be clear on who you are. Be clear about your standards, the ideas inside your head. If perfection is part of your standards, that's okay. However, you should limit it to that role. It's supposed to lift you up and inspire you. It's supposed to push you to become better than what you normally settle for. It's not supposed to beat you down or burn you up. Worst of all, it's not supposed to make you a slave to other people's expectations. The worst thing that you can do is let other people's expectations of perfection for you become your identity. Once again, the worst thing that we can do is let other people's expectations of perfection for you or me become our identity. I wish I could tell you that this is something that most people are conscious of. I wish this was something that you can easily identify and move away from. Unfortunately, it's like a cancer. It grows on you. Unless you're mindful of what you think, right? And about yourself and your place in the world, it creeps up on you. The truth is that sooner or later, perfection becomes part of our identity and starts eating us up from the inside out. So trust me, my friend, let go of it. You're losing nothing when you do that. Instead, you're gaining self-respect. Perfection is toxic. Let me repeat that again. Gain self-acceptance. Perfection is toxic. If you hold it in your hands, you might think you're taking control over it. However, the more you press on it, the more it burns. My friend, I'm saying that from a lot of love. For those who don't know me well, someone who has struggled with perfectionism, felt like I always had to do things perfectly to even have any value or self-worth. And I love these two Brene Brown quotes. Perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels the primary thought. If I look perfect and do everything perfect, I can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. How deep is that? So true. We think those things, if we're not perfect, we're be shameful, have judgment and blame, and how wrong that is. And another one that she has is, we spend our lives waiting until we're perfect or bulletproof before walking into the arena. We ultimately sacrifice relationships, opportunities that may not be recoverable. We squander our precious time. We turn back on our gifts, those unique contributions that only we can make. My friend, if you want to live a level 10 life, if you want to be authentically thriving, we have to stop being perfectionists. And I had to give it up and let it go, and sometimes it's a daily choice, but it's more than possible. All right, let's dive into part 6. All right, so let's look at honestly acknowledging our flaws, part 6 here. Now you've already accepted yourself. You've let go of the idea of perfection as a destination. You have to live your life for you. The next step is to pay attention to your flaws. Everyone has flaws. There's no shame in acknowledging them. Funny thing is, the more you deny them, the stronger they get. And the more you believe that they don't exist, the bigger of an impact they have on your life. So you have to turn them around now and look them straight in the eye. What are the things that really hold you back? What are the things that you're embarrassed about? What are the things that make you feel small, awkward, incomplete, or defective? At this point, it's all subjective. List them out. Write the first thing that comes to your mind. Next, ask yourself this question. Are the flaws because of other people that told me that these were my flaws? Now, this takes quite a bit of work, but remember, there's that brutal honesty we have to get to with ourselves. As much as we love our parents, they're also the number one source of this kind of thing. So, of course, they don't mean to burden their children. They definitely don't mean to give them emotionally damaging or toxic ideas. However, it goes with the territory. After all, we hurt the most the ones that we love. And maybe they say things out of anger or frustration. Maybe you misunderstood them. Whatever the cause, right? Or whatever the case, maybe oftentimes family is the number one source of ideas regarding our flaws. So I want you to go through your memory and ask yourself, are these flaws of mine there because people told me they were the flaws? So do they really hold you back? The next question we have to ask ourselves is whether or not these flaws really hold us back. Do they really trip up our way to success? Do they really make us look bad, perform bad, think badly about ourselves? Oftentimes we blow things out of proportion. As I mentioned earlier in this masterclass, we look at certain things in our lives differently. We read or into meetings that may not really be supported by evidence. They might not be objectively true. Now is a good time to actually look at those things and your personal flaws and ask yourself, are these really negative? For example, if your cousins teased you that you had big eyes, do they really hold you back? Are big eyes really all that rare? Similarly, if somebody said to you in the past that, your forgetfulness makes you look dumb, ask yourself, based on the tests you've done, grades you've successfully passed, as well as the degree maybe you have or don't have, is this true? Focus on the results. Don't focus on how negative it feels. Don't focus on how long you felt negatively about the perceived flaw. Focus instead on what actually happened. At this point, you'd realize that a lot of your flaws are flaws because other people told you that they were. A lot of your flaws are not really your flaws because they don't hold you back. Focus instead on what actually happened. And the next question we have to ask ourselves, involves the true impact. Do you understand the impact they have on you? If there is impact, are you exaggerating it? For example, if you stutter, you may think that this makes you look ridiculous, but you may be very cute. You may have a great sense of humor. You may have a weird take on things that attract people. Similarly, when you keep your mouth shut, a lot of people automatically think you're very smart. Funny how that works, right? Ask yourself what the real impact of these flaws are. Am I blowing things out of proportion? Am I assuming the worst out of them? Again, filter the things that are not really flaws from your list. If it may turn out that if something you can objectively be a flaw, it doesn't really have that much of an impact. Your list should be very thin by now. There should be very few items on your list. However, we're still not done. Ask yourself, how do these remaining flaws prevent me from reaching my full potential? The answer should be obvious. If you want to reach your fullest potential, you have no excuse. You really don't. For example, if your flaw is that you tend to be forgetful, well, there's always workarounds, right? You can carry around sticky notes. You can have daily reminders on your mobile phone. You can even wrap pieces of string around your finger to remind yourself of what you need to do. There's always a way around it. Just because you can't get through the front door doesn't mean the side door is off limits. Just because you can't get in today doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow's a non-starter. I think you get the picture, right? Finally, ask yourself, even if I do have these flaws, what is the price that I'm paying for letting them hold me back from achieving my dreams? Focus on what you stand to lose, because the only thing you will leave this life with, right? Did you try? Did you give it your all? Did you make it far despite what other people said, despite opposition and obstacles that you put in your own way? That is the essence of a truly lived life. For me, when I get to the end of my life, I need to know that I played full out, that I lived that worthy life. And that keeps me going through the darkest of moments of my life. Because I know that at the end of my life, those questions are going to be the ones that I have to ask myself. And I don't know about you, but we have to get to the place where we ask ourselves, given what I stand to lose, is it worth it to crush these flaws? Either you overcome them or they redefine them. Let me give you a story to kind of end this part with. There's this wonderful woman I had the pleasure of working with, and she had these amazing eyes, but she also had one of those hoarse laughs. I mean, I kind of have a funky laugh too. For the longest time, she was very shy, and she told me she was afraid that guys she liked would turn the other direction and leave. However, when she learned how to crack jokes and use it as a centerpiece of her jokes, she instantly became more attractive. She walked into the room even. And so what kind of flaw are you apologizing and making excuses for? Use, the techniques that we discussed. You might have something that's far above or, a perceived flaw or far from even a flaw. It may turn out to be the gem that actually makes you shine. So there's things in life, even our greatest struggles tend to be the ones that are the greatest breakthroughs if we allow it to be. So what are you allowing to say that this is why I'm not worthy, this is my negative point, and how can you turn that around and make it something amazing? All right, next session, quit apologizing for your flaws. So let's take this and take it a little bit deeper. All right, ready for this? Part 7. Quit apologizing for your flaws. Now that you honestly acknowledge your flaws by filtering them, if you're a human, you still have a few flaws on the table. That's perfectly okay, though. You might be thinking to yourself, I really can't live with these. These are holding me back. These are dragging me down. Well, not quite. The first thing we need to do is quit apologizing. You do this by stopping the blame. That's right. You have to quit blaming yourself. Don't think you're the only person in the world who has a problem with exaggeration, with big feet, with big eyes, with premature balding, or whatever flaw you're struggling with. You're not unique. Quit beating yourself up. Quit blaming luck or fortune. People do this all the time. And when we do this, we're giving a tremendous amount of control over to self-definition. We're basically saying, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's just the way it is. It's like that sometimes. No, stop. Stop blaming luck or fortune. There's something you can do about it right here, right now. You do have a lot to say about this matter. It's not a foregone conclusion. Most importantly, we need to start blaming ourselves. It's easy to blame your parents. As I mentioned earlier, we tend to hurt the people we love the most. The truth is, when we blame others or situations out of our control, we are letting go of power in our lives. That's the only thing we're achieving. We're giving other people power if we blame them. How? Well, if they cause the problem, then they have the solutions. For example, someone might have called you fat when you were little. Until there's emotional reconciliation with that person, it'll be hard for you to feel better about yourself. You will self-sabotage by emotional eating or binge eating. A lot of people I work with have issues because someone called them fat when they were younger. This person started that chain reaction and you'll keep blaming that person. Well, here's the problem. That person has moved on with his or her life. You haven't. It's bad enough trying to change yourself, right? Can you imagine changing the other person? Getting them to change of a heart is almost impossible. This is why you have to liberate yourself. Stopping the blame, stopping blaming others is the first step to responsibility. At this point, the solution is no longer the other person. You no longer have to worry about that past. It's impossible to fix the problem if the past is an issue. The only solution, of course, is some sort of time machine. We still don't have the technology. Right? Instead, take responsibility of how you respond to the stimuli. When you stop blaming others, you take your power back. You're no longer looking at these people as the source of transition or the solution. Instead, you take responsibility of how you feel about what they did to you or how the situation played out. You have to step up to this, okay? You have to accept this responsibility. I know it hurts. Listen to me. I know I get the depth of that pain. And I'm so sorry. After all, it's not your fault, right? But it's your responsibility to change how you respond today. It was my responsibility to change how I felt today, what I was doing today. I couldn't let other people define me anymore and all the hurts. If you choose to respond the same way you did yesterday, nothing's going to change. The power will always be in someone else's hand or in the past. Those are people and things that you cannot control. Step up now. Stop waiting for someone else to come around. Stop waiting for something to happen for you to change. You have to take the initiative and responsibility. Again, this is not easy, nor is it convenient. However, it's absolutely necessary to quit apologizing for your flaws. You know, life's hardest challenge is to be yourself in a world where everyone is trying to be somebody else. Isn't that so true? And too many times we allow what other people have said to us to make change who we think we need to be. But you'll only find peace in the world when you make peace with yourself. And part of that is acknowledging your flaws and really turning them into assets, which is possible. And that's going into the 8th part. We're going to learn how to really turn these flaws around into our assets and really become empowered by them. So go ahead and comment if you have a comment. What is your biggest takeaway so far? We're on part 8 out of 10 coming up. So let me know your thoughts right now. What's the biggest aha you've had so far? Let's do this. All right, here we go. Part 8, turning those flaws into assets. One of the first things that we can do in dealing with our flaws, turn them into assets. There really is no such thing as an irredeemable trait. So, for example, if you have a tough time telling the truth, then you're a great storyteller. Run with it. Of course, you're going to tell people that you're engaged in fiction. Maybe you can be a good writer, presenter, narrator, or even a brainstorm specialist. Since you're good at inventing things, why not put different concepts together and figure out what you come up with? It may well lead to better products, better marketing strategies, and a better product positioning, honestly. If you have big blue eyes, please understand that some people are very drawn to people with big eyes, right? There are certain fashion accessories that make big eyes look very attractive. If you have a big head, the same analysis goes. The truth here is that there is no such thing as an irredeemable trait. There's nothing that makes you irredeemably ugly or worthy of only rejection. To turn your flaws into assets, you only need to look at the root. So looking at the root, what's the root of the flaw? Is it your personality? Is it how you define things? Is it how you react to things? Or is it a physical thing? Once you've identified it, ask yourself, can it be converted? For example, if you tend to lie a lot or exaggerate things, Like I said, maybe you could be a good storyteller. Maybe you can be an idea person that comes up with weird or unexpected connections between ideas and concepts. If you have big eyes, can they be converted to assets? I don't know about you, but one of the most attractive, people I've ever seen out there actually had really big eyes. And, a lot of the models, you'll see really big eyes, right? So if you have big eyes, can they be, used to your benefit? Next, you could ask yourself, when you look at the root of the flaw, can it be redirected or combined with another thing to be positive? If you're a very disruptive person, you're always looking for a division, you might find yourself in a situation where that kind of skill is not only viewed positively, but actually in demand. For example, you could be a great litigator. So you're always looking for a division. You're always looking for another side of the argument. You're always looking to poke holes in people's story. Now, in normal relationships, this can get quite annoying, right? That can cause a lot of fights and hurt feelings. However, in the courtroom, that can be a great thing. You see where I'm coming from? See if you can redirect the flaw. Change your mental habits. A lot of our emotional, psychological flaws really boil down to how we interpret the world. These interpretations issues come out of a habit. Habit is something that you keep doing, right? Once you detect some sort of trigger or cue, because it leads you to a reward. For example, if you're a smoker, chances are your triggers, one of your triggers might be eating. When you feel full after a meal, you smoke because you get that nice mellow rush, right? So see what you can do to really look at those mental habits, look at those different things, and really change the things. So, it's that increased blood pressure that leads to that rush, right? That's going to happen, that you get. And so, if we can change what we habitually do to get the same rush or something similar, right? That's where the power lies. And so what can you do to get the same kind of thing? Whatever the case may be, you can work with the same triggers to achieve the same rewards while changing the action that you take in the middle. You see, you're just changing that middle. That's how habits happen. If I'm going to change a habit, I want to replace it with something positive, something that I want there. So the same trigger is going to happen, but I'm going to change what I do, that action. So this is powerful stuff. You can do it. We're going to move on to part 9 here, knowing your limits, and that's another powerful tool. Before we go on, remember, valuing your imperfections as much as your perfections. Complete the circle of self-love. It's a whole circle where, we're complete human beings. A holistic approach to viewing ourselves, once again, is that empowering ourselves. And, I think it's important to note here that we have to enjoy our own company, because you're always going to be with yourself. We can't escape ourselves, right? And that's why people turn to drugs, turn to other things, because we try to numb who we are, because we don't like who we are. Maybe the reason we don't like who we are is because we're trying to live our life defined by other people, or trying to, not look at our limitations, or look at things that we struggle with as assets and turn them around, which we can do. All right, get excited. Part 9 already, you all. Know your limits. Please understand that you are not Superman or Superwoman. Change has limits. I know this seems a bit discouraging, but let's get real, because I'm all about real. I understand that you want to accept yourself. You want to live a more fulfilled life. However, change your limits. Your ability to change has its limits. Accordingly, don't expect change overnight. Don't expect to change across the board. I know that you're frustrated in other areas of your life. There are probably at least 2 other spots that you like to change, but you're not Superman or Superwoman. You can't fix them all at once. Instead, you need to focus on the here and now and work towards the future. A little bit of consistency is way better than a tremendous amount of energy followed by a whole lot of nothing. Focus on what you can control. Focus on what you have available to you. Turn your circle of concern into a circle of responsibility and mastery. Let me say that again. Turn your circle of concern into a circle of responsibility and mastery. For example, you can waste a tremendous amount of time on complaining about your government and economy. You're more than welcome to do that. However, you probably won't be able to change much of anything since you're a private citizen, right? That's just the way it works. Now, instead of worrying about stuff you really can control, why not focus on what's in front of you, right? So if you can't control something, focus on what's in front of you. Do you have a job? Are you happy with your job? Would you like to get a better job? Then apply a better job for a job. Start with a resume. Go to job fairs. Get some counseling, interview, skills training. Again, focus on what is in front of you. Do you want to lose weight? What does your diet look like? What does your exercise look like? What's your mindset? Similarly, right, if we go back to the job example, if you already have a job and you would like to get paid more, focus on your productivity. Can you improve it? Can you produce more? Increase the quality of your work. Be more consistent. Learn more about the job and add more value to your output. These are the things you can control, but unfortunately the human mind often thinks in grandiose terms. We'd rather not think about the changes we need to do to get that raise or to lose that weight. Instead, we focus on why we're not making the money we should be, or why we hate our job, or we're not losing the weight, or why we can't get there, right? The more we achieve the small mundane stuff that we have to deal with every day, the better we get. You become a master in what you do, and guess what? Your value increases. Your boss is not stupid. He or she will notice that you're getting paid $10 to $25 an hour, but your value of work is $20 to $50 an hour. It's in their interest to pay you something close to the value of your work. Do you see how this works? Hopefully so. Resolve to achieve mastery in the things in front of you. Don't think that you have to look for something big, something that's completely different from what you have. For exercise, go for that walk. Start seeing small improvement. Focus on those. You're going to thrive. You're going to build upon those. Focus on what's here. In other words, stop defining yourself with what you should be doing. Those shoulds, right? We need to get rid of them. Instead, you limit yourself, right? So limit yourself, though, this way to the things you must do day after day, week after week, month after month. Focus on that. Get better at them. Get help. Be more efficient. Increase the quality of output. Create systems. Automate. Scale up. Eventually, you can turn things that you think you should do into things that you must do every day. In other words, the things that seem to be so out there eventually make it into your life because you have developed competence, which is the fountainhead of real self-confidence. Again, competence leads to self-confidence. Valuing our imperfections as much as our perfections completes the circle of our self-love. So don't forget that. Focus on what you have. Focus on what you're good at. Focus on what you are doing, and value the things that maybe you don't do right. Value who you are. Value who you can become, as long as it aligns with your true self, because we are looking at our true self here, right? And secondly, I think it's important for us to say life can only overshadow if you let others stand over your sunlight. So don't let others define you. Once again, I have to say this because the truth is that we so often allow others to come in and set the standard for ourselves when we're not setting our own standards. To set their own standard. And let's talk into the last section here. We're going to move on to learn to move on. This is powerful. Stay with it. Like, subscribe, follow if you haven't. Well, we made it to part 10. Learn to move on. But I've got some bad news. Life is unfair. It has its own schedule. That's right. Its own agenda. It's not going to wait around for you. It's just going to keep going. This is why you can't always get what you want when you want it. Accepting your flaws and allowing self-love to flower in your life and empower you requires learning to move on. Learn to accept what you create and what can influence and what you can't. Be at peace with this. The worst thing that you can do to yourself is to think of yourself as some sort of victim that the world owes all sorts of favors to. I've got some more bad news for you. The world doesn't owe you anything. Everyone's got enough problems of their own. Life is truly unfair, chaotic, and in many cases filled with all sorts of suffering. Now, you really have two choices at this point, and I had to come to this point in my life. You're more than welcome to beat yourself up as to why the world isn't the way you think it should be. The path burns up a lot of time, effort, and energy, and oftentimes you're more frustrated than you began and have very little to show for your efforts. The other path, of course, simply means acceptance. Accept life isn't fair, not justifying that everything that's happened is right. People can be mean. Bad things happen to good people, and on it goes. Once you've accepted these, resolve to move on. That doesn't mean that life has defeated you. That doesn't mean that you have become some sort of cynic. Instead, this is the moment of learning. It's the moment of truth. You learn to accept what you can create and what you can influence. That's the best you can do. In other words, instead of feeling powerless because of all the chaos outside of you that you can't really control, your eyes are now open to the things in your life that you can control, because there will always be at least a few areas of your life that you have a lot of say in. Focus on those. That's how you move on. You move on by focusing on what you can create, what you can control, what you can influence. You may not be able to control the economy, but you can control how hard you work. You may not be able to control whether your boss would be eager to promote you, but you can't control the value you bring to the table as far as work is concerned. Focus on what you can control, influence, and let go of everything else. This has to be a paradoxical event, because when you do that, you feel empowered. Trust me, I'm living testimony of it. This really should not be a surprise, because you free up a lot of emotional energy that you used to burn up, worrying about stuff that you can't control. You then redirect all that energy to the things that you can take care of in the here and now. That is how you discover the freedom and joy of moving on. Because remember, you won't have to try to convince others of anything if you believe in yourself. Okay, true happiness, true contentment, my friends, comes when you accept, believe in yourself, and nobody else can take that away from you because it burns within you. And you will always live your life to the fullest, no matter what people say, no matter what people do, because life is unfair, but you can choose to be happy because happiness is a state from being, right? That's who we are. Remember, you deserve as much of your own love as anyone else on this planet. You have to love yourself, not in some self-centered, cocky way, but in a way that says that I will not tolerate people misusing me. I will not tolerate abuse. I will not tolerate those things, but I choose to let go the wrongs that have been done to me, and I choose to respect myself and love myself and be fine with who I am. I am a complete person because you are, and you are fabulous just as you are. So in conclusion, if you want to accept yourself, you have to do it now. Stop playing games with yourself. There will never be a perfect time where everything will fall into place. That is an illusion. In fact, that is an excuse you give yourself over time and time again. So you don't have to start. I know that's unpleasant. I know that you'll probably run into all sorts of truths you've been avoiding all this time, but that is precisely what makes this so urgent. You have one life to live. Make it count. Make it count to that one person that truly matters in your life. That one person, of course, is you. Start today, and you owe it to yourself. I cannot stress enough. To love yourself is to give yourself heaven. This journey of self-discovery, this journey of self-acceptance is truly liberating. And until you can really tap into being okay by yourself, being a complete individual by yourself and be okay with who you are, you will never authentically thrive. You'll never actually live out to be that person that you're meant to be. And this might be one of the most important journeys that you ever take. To shine brightly in your darkest hour is to find your inner light. And it's out of our darkest moments. It's out of those times when we are in that deep despair, when we are questioning everything, that if we truly look within, the inner light that we have is going to get us through anything. But we can't be pretending to be somebody else to get through. We have to really find ourselves. We have to hold on to who we are, because the rest of the world might fall away. People do us wrong. Bad things are going to happen. Trust me, bad things happen to good people. But life's greatest privilege is one's journey through self-discovery. So don't take this lightly. And I have a resource for you. I have made a checklist of sorts to help you kind of go through each of the 10 parts that I went through today. And I made it in an easy way so you can actually go through and you can check off different things. So you can actually make sure that you're doing this and practically applying this. So I encourage you to please go and grab that. The show notes will tell you exactly where to get that from. And really, we started with this quote. And I think it's so important that we end with this. And then I have one more special thing for you that I want to give you. And it's self-acceptance is not acceptance of how you feel about your outer self. It's acceptance of your whole self. Remember, I'm a holistic empowerment coach. It's about a whole being that we have to be fit completely. And that starts by embracing you. And really the way that we start with embracing ourselves is really to look at things and learn to be more mindful of what's going on. And when we're mindful, is not saying that I'm living in this state of all the time, or that I'm disengaging with the world, I'm not facing reality. It's simply being able to bring ourselves back to the present moment when it matters, being fully engaged, or getting out of that negative self-talk, or being able to control our eating and really enjoy being mindful of our eating, mindful walking. There's lots of different things that go into that. And I have a course. And if you go to this link, it's GoJen180fit.com/21-day mind with the exclamation point. There is a special price for you. So I made a discount for you for watching this. And before you would ever get into my authentic living class course, which I am about to actually launch, I would really recommend that you do this one first. And if you do this one, you're going to get with it a 50% off anyway, one of my future courses too. You could use that on my authentic course that's coming out either this week or next week, sometime very, very soon. And you'll get an email where you can see all my courses once you sign up for the 21-day mind. But anyone I work with, I always start with mindfulness, because it's not until we can actually look at the present moment till we can find what really engage with our surroundings, really engage. It's not just engaging inside, okay? A lot of times people think we're engaging internally, which we are, but it's engaging with the outside too. It's noticing the birds. It's noticing the ground. It's really engaging with what's going on with your 5 senses in the moment, in the present. And so I have a little video. If you go to that link, it'll describe everything. I'm going to take time to actually do it, but go check that out. And then I would encourage you to jump into I live an authentic life. Is really the authentic thriving is that place where we have now are mindful. Now I take everything you learned in these 10 parts today and I deep dive into each one of them in a 10-part course that really is going to take you on that journey of really in-depth discovery. It's my journey. It was the road back to me that I had to do. Really when I was at my lowest, when I was coming out of such hating what I saw, like just the worst moment when I was severely depressed and was wondering if life even mattered, if I should even go on. It was that journey that really brought me back to being who I am, embracing me. And now I'm unashamed of who I am. I embrace who I am. Yes, do those thoughts still come? Yes, do I still feel insecure at times? Do I still struggle with bad comments or bad things? Yes, but it rolls off me easier. And so know that you are worth it. You're worth this journey. You are an amazing individual, and I want you to shine. My heart is that you live authentic life, that you are fully alive, that when you get to the end of your life, you can look back and say, I played full out. I did everything I was supposed to do. Every person I was supposed to talk to, I touched everything I was supposed to create, or whatever it was, or that my children were raised to be whole human beings, unlike I was, whatever it is. So thank you for taking part in this it's over an hour masterclass. I realize that whether you're here and you are live with me or you are here and you are on the replay, please comment. Let me know your thoughts. What were your ahas? What more questions you have? Please engage with me. Let me know what more questions you have about living a fit life, whether it be our mindset, whether it be our emotions, or whether it be how we work out, or our nutrition, or our habits, our micro habits that lead us to that success. Your questions are how I determine what to publish on this channel. So make sure you like, you subscribe, ring that bell so you're alerted anytime that I bring you relevant information, go live like this. And once again, there's a gazillion stations you could be watching right now, a gazillion videos that are probably even more entertaining than this, but you did the hard work. You showed up, and I want you to know that you are important. I see you. I value you. You are worth this because you are you. Don't be anybody else.
So what else stand on by Brene Brown?
So we're going to check
Owning
out
our story can be hard,
Mindfulness
not
course. Go
nearly as
download
difficult
your
as
free
spending
resource
our lives
guide
running from it.
to help
Embracing
you on
our
this journey.
vulnerabilities
And
is risky,
remember,
but not nearly as
your
dangerous
power,
as giving
and
up
your
on love
power
and
is
belonging
within
and joy.
you.
The experiences
Be brave,
that
be kind,
make
live
us the most
authentically, and
vulnerable.
always shine.
Only
Tribe.
when
And
we are
remember, you're just
brave enough to explore
180,
the darkness,
right?
we
That shift
discover
and
the
that change,
infinite
micro
power
habit
of
away,
our
and maybe that
life.
is finding that
Go
journey that
discover
will
the
back to
infinite
you
power
and
of
really
your life
thriving
today, my
as
friend.
you for once in your life.